Welcome to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast and part 2 of our discussion about lodge dues.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
When we left off in our last conversation, we were talking about our Connor had just proposed a due structure where we would be able to have a graduated dues, sort of a progressive structure for different people. And David was saying how we ought to save some more money in our lodges and not just spend everything we have, but start building up war chests. So, ready, set, go.
I believe he also mentioned trying to buy people cars. Can I get a Working Tools Podcast Lodge number 1, please? I'll take a 2019 Range Rover with all the bells and whistles in English racing green, please.
I just was thinking it was surprising to me when I joined Masonry. Several things, of course, but the monetary side of things was interesting. I was shocked that there wasn't a war chest, that every lodge didn't have $1 million or a significant amount of savings. And they're always scraping to be able to provide charitable works. And it was just something we talk about. I understand charity is a different word. It doesn't always mean money. But there's a few lodges out there that have a lot of money. And usually it's because they've been fortunate to sell their land or building or whatever. It's not necessarily because they've budgeted properly or planned for it over the last 100 years. So it's a kind of an anomaly.
Well,
the other part,
I don't know what it's like down in Washington there, but in BC, our lodges, they have to have a holding society created to own the building. And so a lodge can't own the building.
But that has more to do with BC's laws than anything else.
Well, we have a similar holding corporation issue, but that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about the value and the building. I mean, you could have a $10 million building and the lodge could still be broke because the building's not making any money.
Yeah, see, in our case, with Prince Charles Lodge and St. George's Lodge, our building has a management team, a holding society, made up of the various members of our organizations, right? And we have renters in the commercial part downstairs, and so they manage all of that. And they've got a few $100,000 in the bank, contingency funds and things like that. But it's what keeps our dues cheap, because if we didn't have those to pay our mortgage, our dues would be probably $400 or $500 a piece, right?
And so, do you have significant charities like a scholarship fund for high schoolers that you give $50,000 a year away for scholarships? Or
No, we don't have that kind of money to give away. We had our lodge, anyways, had a couple of members that passed that left us some money, $40,000 or $50,000 or something like that, and it was put into because it was bequeathed money. We put it into a fund, and then the interest that fund generates, we donate that interest to the scholarship fund, and then that gets drawn from as need be.
Let's see if your dues had been significant enough over the how old is your lodge? How long has it been around?
75 years.
Yeah. So if your lodge, if from the beginning the dues had been significant enough, and you'd been developing some kind of a charity fund over those 75 years, and you had $1 million in there, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to give $100,000 a year away in charities, scholarships, homeless, cancer car, whatever? I mean,
Yep.
Ashlar Lodge is older than the country, and we have a certain amount of money in the bank, but we certainly couldn't, give away hundreds of thousands a year.
And wouldn't that be cool?
It would be really cool.
You gotta unmute yourself, bud.
Yeah,
I thought I was being clever and taking out the background noise, but
it would be really cool. And the only organization I'm aware of is Grand Lodge, who gives out $100,000+ a year in bursaries, and that again is coming from the interest on investments, right? So
and our lodge years ago sold our building before I joined, so 15, 20 years ago. And so we have some money left over from that. And the idea is everyone says, oh, someday we're going to buy a new lodge building. We're not just going to be renters. We're going to own a new building. And I said when I was master the first time when we raised the dues, we should raise the dues $10 more and put that extra $10 into the building fund. And everyone said, $10 a member. We've got like 100 members. That's $1,000 a year. Why even bother? But yeah, if we'd started back 10 years ago when I was master the first time, we would have some money. How do they tell you to save for retirement, right? You put a little bit away every month. Just because you can't do it today doesn't mean a little bit at a time you can get there, right? Time, patience, and perseverance accomplich all things, someone said.
Absolutely agree. That's what was, I couldn't believe it, that there isn't something being saved and something being planned. I remember when I joined, the Mason that helped me to get started, when he was, Connor earlier was talking about the rich guys from the U.S. I'm not wealthy by any means. I wouldn't consider myself wealthy. However, at that time, I was kind of thinking about, I was doing a lot of golfing, so I thought it'd be interesting to look at golf memberships. And so I was looking around at some places to join a golf club. And they're crazy expensive, a lot of them. There's a few that are, relatively inexpensive, but there's some that are crazy, $10,000 to join and then $500 a month or $1,000 a month to be a member, or lots more in some cases. There's a couple that are less. And so I was thinking about this mystic society. And when we were sitting down and he was saying, there is a financial commitment involved. And I thought, oh, here it comes. It's going to be, $1,000 to join or $5,000 to join and, $1,000 a year or whatever. And he said, dues are $60. I said, you mean a month? He said, no, a year. I said, well, my Lions Club dues are $85. And, and he said, the membership fee is $175. I thought, okay. And so I was baffled. I thought, was this not what I'm thinking it is? Is this not the amazing secret society? And then again, when we get involved and get started and you find out lodges are sometimes hand to mouth or going backwards, they're spending their bankroll. It's kind of baffling to me.
That's why I don't understand why more lodges don't do, this is our budget and divided amongst the membership and then things are covered, right? It's never made any sense to me how they could work in a deficit budget. Right? But
shouldn't that budget include your charities for one, but also the saving for the future, like Matt was saying? Now, maybe you have a lodge, everything's fine. I agree. I think the lodge itself, the building itself, should be paying for itself. And if Matt's lodge wanted to restart a building fund, that's a whole different topic. It's over the subject for his lodge to regenerate those funds. But once you lose a building, why did that happen? What were the causes for the loss of the building? Was it poor management? Was it and a lot of lodges I talk to that don't have lodges, they say, well, gosh, we didn't do it right the first time. How are we going to fix it the second time?
Right. And I think there's something to be said for that thought. And actually, as we are going to be having this heavy discussion in our lodge in the next BOGP and other meetings coming up real quick, I like that idea of, an extra $50 a year per person to go. And it just goes into a sustainability fund that, we building up that war chest for the what if days, for the rainy day fund, for whatever, to build our stability. Our financial stability needs to be there. And if that's what it takes to give it a little added security, I think it's a great idea. I mean, maybe I'm just saying that because I only pay dues to one lodge and then Scottish Rite. So, all in all, I think
Those are rookie numbers. Rookie numbers. You got to pump up those numbers.
I mean,
It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to join.
I got 150 and I got 80, right? So,
Join Royal Arch,
right?
the best arch.
No, you see, you got to have time to do all those extra things, right? And I just don't.
You have as much time as you want.
Yeah, that's what my wife thinks too. And this is not reality. I only have so much time in the day. What's that first lesson we're taught as entered apprentices and how to divide up the 24 hours in a day?
Amen, brother.
And,
and also the idea of your more penniless state. I mean, if we're, I got to go back to my comment about what you're getting out of lodge, and Matt's comment about value, his question about value. If you had to pay $1,000 or $1,200 a year to join a lodge, or to join a Scottish Rite, or to join York Rite, or to join Eastern Star, it would be a very serious decision. And I know Connor mentioned earlier about being a young man and trying to develop himself. And I've had those conversations. I'm kind of the West gatekeeper for our lodge. And I've had those conversations with guys kind of starting out in life. And even the $80 we charge, or the $200 we charge for entrance, and then $80 a year can be difficult for some guys. And I say, gosh, if that's a difficulty, then maybe at this stage in your life, masonry isn't the choice. And I agree, it shouldn't be a rich person's event, but $1,200 a year, just as that number, again, maybe it's 600, maybe it's 500, whatever the number is, it shouldn't be. Someone was saying to me that maybe it should be connected to the sales tax, in our case, Washington, for that region. Or was that you, Matt, or somebody were talking about the sales tax, because it's different sales tax rates for different areas. I don't know if the same applies to your VAT in Canada.
But that's a brilliant idea. I think our jurisdictions, our province of British Columbia should charge a 1% sales tax and give it to Freemasonry.
No. It's an indexed rate. So do you all pay different tax rates based on your cities or your?
I have no idea what I pay in taxes. My accountant does.
Because you have the VAT, which is a federal tax, right? It's the province tax.
Yeah. Now you're talking income tax or sales tax?
Yeah, I'm sorry, sales tax. Whatever your sales tax would be.
We have HST. No, we have provincial sales tax and general sales tax.
And are they different based on your province, right? Your province is
yeah. So when I'm selling someone a kilt, I charge them 7%, which is provincial sales tax, and 5%, which is general sales tax, which is the national sales tax.
Right.
So you don't have a city. You don't have a city variable tax or a county. Okay.
Right, but you see, like somebody in Saskatoon, they have a different sales tax. They wouldn't be charging me that if I purchased something in Saskatoon online or something like that. So yeah, we have different taxes for each province. Now we have the federal tax, which is the same. That's the GST, the 5%. Everybody else's provincial taxes are different.
But your provinces would kind of be equivalent to our states, if you will, kind of. I mean, so we don't have a state tax and we don't have an income tax in Washington. We do. Each of the counties, which is a regional area, has its own tax rate, and then each of the cities have their own tax rate. So you could have 50 cities in a county and have 50 different tax rates on top of the county rate or state sales tax. And so it was an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that, having the index to the sales tax for the area, which would automatically flow. So, and the people in the more impoverished areas that don't charge as much sales tax don't have to pay as much.
As a side note, going back a few minutes when we were talking about the designation of our days, I think it's really funny that the Freemasons think I sleep 8 hours a night.
Yeah. We all wish we could get 8 hours a night. Yeah.
So I think Connor brings up an interesting point too, that I want, so in my heart I feel that Masonry, again, its goal is to improve us as individuals, right? In theory. That if we can make, if I improve myself by whatever it is, 1% a year because I'm a Mason, that slowly my arc bends towards being a better man and that sort of stuff. It's not an instantaneous process or anything, but it's there. But I'd like to think that if someone had started when they were 21, that 1% a year bend by the end of their lifetime, there you go, And by the end of your lifetime, you'd be a way better person than I am, that's for sure. That you would be that slow deflection has more time to work and it has more impact in their lives.
Well, I already have this goal that I want to live to be old enough that the Grand Lodge of British Columbia has to make a 100-year jewel for me.
There you go. But it's so I feel the instinct to try and accommodate younger guys into the fraternity. I think that's a valid point, and I wish I had a good answer for it, because the other half of my brain says, yeah, but we can't bankrupt our lodges trying to do it, kind of thing. There's a happy medium in there somewhere.
And I think if we were to have the dues that were so too expensive, it would ruin kind of part of the purposes of DMLA, because when you look at DMLA, you're not expected, but it's fairly common that a DMLA will go from being a DMLA to being a Freemason. When I was a DMLA, Phoenix chapter's dues were $50 a year. Now, if I went from paying $50 a year to paying $1,200 a year, that would be a little bit of a shell shock. So, not only in that scenario, but especially if there's so much talk, especially in this jurisdiction of British Columbia and Yukon, of the younger Masons being the most important. They are the future of Freemasonry, right?
Right.
Well, that's all well and good, but if you create a price curtain in Victoria, there's a municipality called Oak Bay, which is really expensive, and they call it the Tweed curtain, because you can't get there unless you can afford to pass the Tweed curtain. So if there's a Tweed curtain into Freemasonry, then you're only going to get like 40 or 50-year-olds, like the old farts like you guys, who can afford that sort of thing.
But now, if you think about it, now, why would a lodge charge so much in dues? They have to have a value proposition, or nobody's going to pay it, right? Now, if that happens to be, that every meeting includes a banquet and education and a speaker or something like that, and there's a designed format, okay, that appeals to a certain amount of people. Just like Ashlar College appeals to Connor because he's an intellectual, right? It doesn't appeal to me. So I have no reason to want to join Ashlar Lodge, right?
Just to specify, Ashlar College and Ashlar Lodge are
Ashlar College, right? Okay.
I'm a member of both, but they're separate.
Right. So, and it's like going into Scottish Rite. Is there perceived value for me there? Yes, there is. Am I willing to pay what it costs to go there? Yes, I am. And now that the Rose Croix and the consistory, they're all part of that. Okay, so now am I prepared to pay for those? Is there enough value there? Yes. For me, I see value in it. Now, I love to eat. So if my lodge said, hey, we're doing 10 meals a year, your dues are $400, but that includes your meals, and then we're going to have a sit-down catered meal and so on. That appeals to me, right? Number one.
Henderson Lodge does catered dinners, not every meeting, but this year, as junior warden-elect, or not junior warden-elect yet, but the junior warden designate, I've been starting to look at what caterers I'm going to use, and we have sit-down meals before the meal or before the lodge meeting, and we only charge $200 a year.
But you include how many meals a year?
10.
10.
And so you're going backwards then. You're going backwards then on if your catering's not $5 a meal or $10 a meal, you're going backwards on your income.
Right. But just the fact that Henderson Lodge has those banquets before every meeting, okay? If that was of interest to me, I would join that lodge. If it cost me $300, $500, whatever. If that was of interest, that's not like different. In the States, you guys have these other lodges like their affinity lodges. They're like guys who are into football, and they all belong to, what do they call those?
We don't have affinity lodges, really.
They have them in England, though.
Maybe not in
There's some
Washington,
on the
but
East
down in
Coast, there's colleges and stuff.
England has a lot of affinity lodges. That's
Like, there is an absolutely amazing lodge in London called Chelsea Lodge, and the lodge is entirely made up of showmen, like entertainers. So if you were to go to like a Master Mason degree at Chelsea Lodge, it would literally be like going and sitting in on a play. That's how amazing their degree work is.
I'm sure it is, right? But the fact remains, if that's of interest to you, it's a special interest lodge. Okay, so this lodge that's going to be charging $500 or $1,000 in dues isn't every lodge, right? It's only going to be one or two lodges that might do something like that, right? Now, I think David's point though was, we need to be charging more dues so that we're not going backwards, et cetera, right?
More dues for not going backwards, but also, why did we join Masonry? I know there's a social aspect to it, but we're also, like Matt talked about, the idea is to learn and grow as a man. And while I've fully admitted on the show that I've opened the book more in the last 20 episodes and done some studying that I haven't done in 10 years as a Mason. And so this show has caused me to do more research and to learn about what I should be doing. And I texted earlier, I can't believe we're going to talk about it in the future. I didn't realize how much the information there was about the point within a circle, or the circumpunct, or whatever you want to call it.
Apparently, yeah. So apparently, it has a funny name.
But I didn't know all of that information, all the history. So now there's a new guy going to be joining our lodge, and he's joining us because we've talked that we have some education, and I'm working on some other stuff too. But now I can actually tell the guy, yeah, I know some information. We can actually have a little education. We can have even more education. There's things available. And so when I joined Masonry, and he told me it was $80, I also assumed that on Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, I'd have to go to a trainings class for the next 3 years or 4 years as an apprentice Mason, as a new guy, learning the ropes, just like I did in the military. And when that didn't happen, that became my expectation. And so now my expectation is, if you call me want me to come out at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday for an education class, out of 10 Masons, you'd get 1 or 2. So I think, again, like you said, the value is, what's the value? If the value included a retreat and I was expected to go and it was paid for as part of my dues, I would probably make time to get there. But if you tell me I need to spend $500 extra this year to go to that leadership retreat, I don't know if I can scrape that together. But if I already paid for it, I'd probably figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
So there's a balancing act here, I think, of what we're saying, between having enough money to operate the lodge and have it be successful, whatever that means. We should talk about what a successful lodge is sometime. But between having enough money to operate and be successful and support the programs of the lodge, and being able to justify it in the value proposition that you offer your members.
Well,
those things are obviously tied together. They're not completely divorced from one another.
To take a term directly from our ritual, it is, all of these things are all well and good, but it all comes down to the length of a brother's cable toe. And it literally says in one of the pieces in the ritual that you're not going to do anything if it brings to you, I was just looking at this earlier at my lodge practice, but if it brings to you material injury to yourself or your dependents, right? So it's all well and good to be in Freemasonry, but Freemasonry is not supposed to make you broke. Unless you run for Grandmaster.
So we're done with that.
Yeah, that one just published a couple hours ago. So.
I realize that, but I'm still, in this scenario, it's still a useful topic. Is if it's not within someone's cable toe to pay X amount of dollars a year.
I yes, just making a joke. Yeah.
No, but I would agree though. I would say that you wouldn't have the cable toe. You wouldn't have been introduced to the cable toe if you weren't able to afford the dues to begin with. So I think a lot of lodges have reduced their entry threshold so much that they're just getting anybody. And I was part of that. And I feel like if I want to change the rules, then I'm changing it. I need to change it for myself as well. My past self, so to speak, 10 years ago when I joined. So what would I still do 10 years ago? And I got to be careful. I do want to be careful that not changing the rules so much that nobody can join or people wouldn't join.
Well, see, we had this perceived value discussion in our lodge, and we polled the membership, And as the members come in, we were polling them as well because we implement the 6-step program. And in doing so, we found that they wanted education. They wanted these things. So our lodge created programs to facilitate meeting those wants and needs of our membership. And thankfully, there hasn't been a cost to it, right? But if it was the want and desire of the membership to do things differently, like pay for all our members to go to the leadership conference and things like that, that would be one unique thing. I think it's a great idea, and yes, it might mean that lodge dues go up, and maybe the way to do those things so that it is not so limiting. I mean, the fact is, if I couldn't afford to go to Grand, like next year, I couldn't afford to go to Grand Lodge next year. It's going to be on Vancouver Island over in Connor's hometown, right? And so Connor's going to be able to go.
Hold on. Next year is going to be our 150th anniversary.
Yeah,
you better show up.
And the problem is, it's cost prohibitive for me to go. So I'm choosing not to go to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm spending my money traveling within my district here and being an active Mason in my district. Is it worth me going? Grand Lodge, always there's great information, always. But it can also be disseminated through other means. And we always get reports back and so on. So will I go? Probably not, because it's cost prohibitive. If my dues included it and every member of my lodge was going to Grand Lodge because it was part of our dues and program, all right, I'm going to make my best effort to go.
But it's important to specify that cost prohibitiveness is not because of the cost of Grand Lodge. It's because of the cost of traveling and more specifically the hotel room.
For sure.
Right. It's the travel, right? But now, if we do these other things, like make it optional, you can opt in on this program. We have a program in our lodge where, our dues are this, and we have an optional educational component that, our members pay X for, the extra $250. Now, those who are seeking education, they'll pay that extra money, right? Those who aren't, and who are in it for the brotherly love and affection like me, then I don't have to pay that money because I'm not going for the education stuff. Maybe having that option there is a new way to think about different levels of dues to accommodate those who can't afford.
Hey, Matt, Dave, do you guys want to tell him that he runs an education podcast?
I garner myself on that idea too, because even in our title we talk about a casual conversation. So yes, I want this show to be a little more educational, especially on occasion. But I do like this. We're having a great conversation, and I think there's value to it. And so I think we can have other shows too that are a little more educational that we can feed in, and we can have training.
That's when we get Trevor.
Yeah, for sure. We have somebody come on that has a little more expertise and some depth to it. I'm also biased. I'm learning how to do some of this stuff because I want to do this for our Grand Lodge and for my own lodge itself. I want to have an education program. I want to record it all, and I want to have interaction. I want to have a Connor Massey from BC come on and talk to us about Freemasonry in Canada, and that'll be a segment that guys from my lodge can come on and watch and learn about Masonry in Canada. What a cool topic to be part of and pay that extra $200 a year potentially. That's an interesting idea if there's costs involved in hosting the videos, whatever. But what wouldn't be awesome to have at this educational repository of all this, not just stuff you can read, but stuff you can listen to and watch.
So I think we're running to the end of our half an hour of the episode, the second half of this dues discussion. So I want to discuss something real quick. So if we can just go around. Do each of our lodges, do you have life memberships? Start with, I don't know, Stephen, do you guys have life memberships?
We used to, but life memberships in British Columbia have been undone by Grand Lodge.
Oh, wow.
There is no more life memberships in our jurisdiction.
Really?
So is that, I assume it's the same, obviously, for Connor?
Well, we do have a few life members in my lodge, but it's more the lodge just pays for them.
What when they undid it, what happened to those funds?
Those funds got returned to the lodges to do with what they felt was right.
Really?
If the members were still alive, the members should have gotten their money back. If the members were not and have passed, then the lodge has those funds to do with what they will.
To clarify what I was saying earlier, is these people who, I might be mistaken on this, but to my knowledge, one of my lodges has at least one member who has done enough, and the lodge now pays his dues as like an honorarium. It's not like he spent X amount of dollars to become a life member.
Okay. So, David, your lodge does life memberships, I assume?
We do have life memberships, and I'm also disappointed that 125-year-old lodge as we are, we only have a very small amount. Again, I think we should have, if we had just paid for every past master, if every past master had gotten a life membership, we'd have hundreds of memberships. And just quickly, I know we are running out of time here, but I know someone suggested about the idea of dues. Maybe when a guy comes in, the dues are X amount, $150, whatever. And for his life, they're 150 dues. But the next guy that comes in next year, dues are now $200, and he has to pay $200 for his whole life. And the next year, the next guy is $250, and he has to pay $250 his whole life. So there's an idea. It kind of almost like a life membership concept.
So our lodge also does life memberships. We participate in the Grand Lodge plan. Although I will say we have set in our most recent dues increase, we went from $80 to $100. We set our life membership fees very high, well, what's perceived to be very high by the people of Washington.
What are they?
So for the youngest age bracket, it's $2,000. For the 18 to 35-year-old age bracket, it's $2,000, which is about 20 years dues. And for the highest age bracket, for 75 plus, it's $1,000, and it's graduated in between there. It's, $1,000, $2,000, $1,750, $1,500, $1,250, $1,000.
See, but I don't want to get into a big discussion about this because we are running out of time. But from my point of view, paying $2,000 for a life membership would make sense for me. Like that doesn't seem very high.
Yeah, my brother.
Exactly, I think it's still kind of low. But the point is that when I bought my life membership should probably be a whole separate episode. But when I bought my life membership, it was $550 for me, and we get about maybe 4% back on our life memberships. So that's $22 for my life membership a year. And then our per capita for Grand Lodge is $28. It just went to $34. So literally, my lodge until I die is going to be losing money on me every year. And I, contribute a couple extra bucks every year just to cover it or whatever.
Hence why BC squashed the program, because it was going backwards. It was great when we were getting double-digit returns on the money. But when they're going backwards, it was costing them to facilitate the program. They said, whoa, we're going backwards. We don't want to do that. So they squashed the program.
But I also think if every person got a life membership, that pot would be so big over time.
Maybe on a per member basis. But yeah, I've been known to say that the only good life member is a dead life member.
All right, we're running out of time, guys. So I guess any final words on dues?
I have some final words for everyone. Hippopotamus, orange, and orangutan.
Thank you, Professor Dumbledore.
My final words on dues is that they should be your operating budget divided by your membership, and your membership makes up the budget and the plan for the year. So it's self-driven.
I love that idea, Stephen, and I'm actually going to talk to my guys about that. However, I want to include the plans for $1 million war chest in there, so it needs to increase. But I also think that there should be some monies in there at the lodge level or membership level or whatever that include automatic education, opportunities for education. Again, I think even though we're all busy, we'd all find time to get to a weekend seminar or to a weekend retreat if it was already paid for.
And I guess my final words would be to encourage the lodges to consider the value that you offer to your members and what it is you're giving them for that money. And if you charge a whole lot of money because you give them a whole lot of value, great. If you don't give them much value, then you're only driving them away with higher dues. So on that note, on behalf of Stephen, Connor, David, and myself, thank you very much for watching the Working Tools podcast this week. and we look forward to hearing from you. Please leave us some comments and subscribe, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much. Good night.